Testing. Great. Good evening. I am Zoe Stevens, Chair of the Board of Trustees for Historic Charleston Foundation, and I am delighted to be here in person with a few of you, and we are streaming live. Also, I'd like to recognize those joining us via our YouTube channel. We thank you for participating, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all on this beautiful afternoon to the Foundation's 74th Charter Day celebration. Each year, we celebrate the founding of Historic Charleston Foundation by honoring those who have made extraordinary contributions in preserving Charleston's irreplaceable historic built environment and cultural character. It is particularly fitting to recognize our awardees during May, which is National Preservation Month. I hope you will visit our website at historiccharleston.org and our social media channels to learn more and engage with us in the variety of programs that we are offering this month to celebrate preservation, including our annual Festival of Houses and Gardens tours on May the 17th, the 14th, and the 21st. On behalf of the trustees and staff of Historic Charleston Foundation, I thank you again for joining us. And at this time, I'd like to just remind everyone to please silence your cell phones if you haven't already. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Winslow Hasty, President and CEO of Historic Charleston Foundation. I add my thanks to Zoe's for joining us as we honor the Foundation's 2021 Charter Day Award winners. Historic Charleston Foundation is a multifaceted preservation organization, and we approach our work in a variety of ways through advocacy, research, education, and stewardship. This diversity and breadth yields powerful momentum, impacting Charleston in many meaningful ways. This past year, COVID may have slowed the world down, but our work over this year to protect the Charleston region from a multitude of threats has accelerated. We joined leaders of the Phillips community in Mount Pleasant to successfully seek an alternative route for improvements to Highway 41, avoiding a massive road expansion that would have adversely impacted this historic community. To guarantee its further protection, we are now working with other nonprofit partners to nominate this African American settlement community with roots back to the 1870s to the National Register of Historic Places. And despite an extremely challenging environment for community engagement created by the pandemic, the Foundation successfully led the community discourse around the proposed Army Corps seawall project. This seawall would be the largest infrastructure project in recent history and will forever alter the peninsula. To ensure deeper analysis and opportunities for broader public input, we led a private sector fundraising effort to engage the Dutch Dialogues team, yet again, for an independent review of the project. Additionally, we pushed for a full environmental impact statement, which will give the community a more potent voice in expressing concerns over the wall's impacts to both Charleston's historic district as well as the scenic views of the water. New ordinances like the recent conservation zoning ordinance that further protects wetlands, trees, historic structures, and cultural resources in suburban areas have been added to Charleston's preservation arsenal. We are also integrally involved in the redevelopment of the former Navy base in North Charleston, a huge preservation project led by a team that is committed to the proper adaptive reuse of its amazing buildings. We are partnering with them to ensure the history of the base is documented and the stories of the people that lived and labored there are preserved. The growth Charleston continues to experience requires constant vigilance and deft navigation at the intersection of historic preservation and the demands of modern society. The support of our constituents allows us to successfully champion preservation, ensuring that the very thing that makes Charleston so special remains at the forefront of the conversations that moves the region forward. We could not be more appreciative of your support, especially during this time. And now to the awards. The Stoney Craftsmanship Award recognizes craftspeople who have kept alive Charleston's tradition of excellence in the building trades and other crafts. We are pleased to honor 3 deserving individuals tonight with this award. Robbie Clare's talents are expansive. A bit of a Renaissance man, he began his career as an art teacher in Alaska and Japan, and later studied glass blowing and jewelry making. He found his passion in historic building rehabilitation, working with local restoration contractor Rick Rockwell when he returned to his native Charleston. A gifted carpenter, Robbie expertly restores historic windows, staircases, trim, and mantels. He specializes in repurposing historic materials for repairs and creating new woodwork within a project. Rarely does he purchase new wood from the lumberyard. Near Hampton Park, 10 Elmwood Street was once a dilapidated structure. Robbie's talent ensured that all the historic windows survived, avoiding the need for any replacement. He also impressively salvaged an entire staircase from another dilapidated building and installed it here. At 50 South Street on Charleston's east side, Robbie restored the brackets at the doorway that others may have discarded because of their level of decay. His commitment to the preservation of historic elements of the house is matched by his passion for the house's history. He researches the history of the property and even takes time to seek out and meet with former owners and neighbors to gain a more in-depth understanding of the house. Historic Charleston Foundation is pleased to present the Stoney Craftsmanship Award to Robbie Clare, a carpenter and craftsman, for his exceptional talent, careful attention to historic detail, and his creative repurposing of salvaged material in his projects. Robbie, please come forward. In the 1740s, a teenage Eliza Lucas Pinckney cultivated indigo with the hard work and knowledge of enslaved people and elevated it into a major South Carolina cash crop. England was Carolina's largest importer of indigo until the trade was disrupted by the onset of the American Revolution. No longer part of an English colony, South Carolina indigo growers lost their principal market after the war, as England turned to India to supply its demand for the popular dye. By 1802, the crop was no longer listed among the state's exports. Yet, local artist Lee Magar has helped to ignite a revival in heirloom indigo production and craftsmanship. Inspired by Pinckney, she has adopted what she terms a seed-to-stitch approach. She now lives and works on a former cotton and indigo plantation on Johns Island, where she cultivates her own heirloom indigo crops, produces the dye, and fabricates clothing and textile art inspired by nature, folkways, and history. At her textile design studio, Madame Magar, Lee harvests indigo and other wild dye plants to use in her hand-stitched collections. Inspired by her grandmother and great-aunt, she explores the past in her work, using homespun traditional sewing techniques interlaced with contemporary methodologies. Her arresting silhouette portrait work includes the Madame Magar logo, Corey McCallum, and Nina Simone. Her body of work also includes dresses, accessories, home goods, and textile art using scrap materials. Historic Charleston Foundation is pleased to present the Samuel Gilliard Stoney Craftsmanship Award to Lee Magar for her passion and dedication to resurrecting heirloom indigo cultivation and dyeing techniques, which played such an important role in the Low Country's history and culture. Lee, if you'd please come forward. As a young boy cooking at his grandmother Doris's feet, Kevin Mitchell became entrenched in the culinary world. Following his dream, he trained and worked as a chef, earning dual degrees from the Culinary Institute of America. He later went on to obtain a master's degree from the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. His thesis, From Black Hands to White Mouths, Charleston's Freed and Enslaved Cooks and Their Influence on the Food of the South, and subsequent studies, makes him a leading scholar on the subject of Gullah foodways. His forthcoming book on the subject will be published in August. Along with Chef Mitchell's passion for good food, he expertly shares the stories behind the uniquely regional dishes we enjoy today. In his own words, it is vital to, quote, connect the food to the people, end quote, and remember the once enslaved chefs and cooks, quote, on whose shoulders we stand for, creating the food we now know as Southern cuisine, end quote. This was especially true in 2015 when he helped organize the 150th anniversary of Nat Fuller's Feast. The original 1865 event, held by once enslaved Charleston chef and caterer Nat Fuller, gathered black and white patrons for a racially integrated banquet, the first formal gathering of its kind to be held in South Carolina after the Civil War. As chef coordinator of the anniversary event, Chef Mitchell masterfully recreated dishes from the original menu. He says this event was a highlight of his career that inspired him to delve even deeper into this type of historically focused cooking. In recognition of his work in advancing the research of African American cuisine and foodways through scholarship and education, Historic Charleston Foundation is proud to honor Chef Kevin Mitchell with a Stoney Craftsmanship Award. If you'd please come forward, Kevin. Thank you. The White Law Founders Award recognizes individuals, groups, or government entities that actively engage in the long-term preservation of important buildings and places. Tonight, we recognize 5 projects. The Architecture and Community Build Graduate Certificate Program of Clemson's Architecture Program is a sequence of design-build studios and courses targeting design as a mechanism for social justice and as a key component in sustaining communities. with the program's emphasis on the design-build process and creative collaboration. Students gain the perspective that community dialogue and innovative design solutions can become the catalyst for positive change. True to the university's mission, the program embodies the spirit of service learning and student engagement while celebrating creative placemaking, sustainable environments, and entrepreneurism. The faculty and students have collaborated on built projects with local governments, nonprofits, and educational institutions across Charleston and the Lowcountry, and have completed projects that are not only aesthetically interesting, but also become community gathering places. Projects like the Corinne Jones Park, Playground, and Pavilion, the Inston Homes Community Garden, the open-air retail stands at Kiawah River Farmstead, and the newly completed pedestrian bridge at Forrest Park Playground create important community connections. These installations are unique design elements in the public realm for all to enjoy, revealing that good design does not have to be expensive or out of reach. Historic Charleston Foundation is pleased to present the Clemson Architecture Center and the Architecture and Community Build Program with a Whitelaw Founders Award in recognition of its work to build community through impressive collaborative design projects throughout the Lowcountry. Accepting the award for the program is David Pastry, Senior Lecturer at the Clemson School of Architecture and Program Coordinator. David, please step forward. The John Ravenel House at 5 East Battery is a former bed and breakfast that has been rehabilitated and restored as a grand single-family residence. The property owners, Scott Besant and John Freeman, assembled an all-star team to undertake the multi-year project, to include architect Glenn Keys, preservation contractor Moby Marks, and New York-based landscape architect Perry Guillot. The work involved the restoration of Greek Revival details and mantels, reconstruction of brick fireplaces, the reopening of the ground floor loggia, and the removal of historically inappropriate repairs and modern interventions. The project also included complex flood mitigation work, as the property has endured repeated flooding over more recent years. This saltwater inundation had greatly damaged the first floor structure, resulting in significant repairs to the foundation, floor joists, and mortar joints. To address the ongoing water intrusion from high tides and increased storms, a comprehensive system was developed. The use of check valves, sump pumps, fans in the crawl space, the reconstruction of the garden wall along the street, and the fabrication of temporary flood panels for the driveway and pedestrian gates together will protect the property from flooding on East Battery. We applaud the exemplary stewardship of this important property by the current owners, not only in rehabilitating this extraordinary home, but also ensuring its survival and preservation for generations to come. We are pleased to present them with a Whitelaw Award for following the highest standards of preservation in the rehabilitation and protection of this significant historic residence. And I believe Glenn and Moby, is Mr. Best? Oh, hello, all right, excellent. Scott, if you will please come down. Thank you so much. The Hutchinson House, constructed in 1885 by men born into slavery, was a community center and gathering place for the African American population on Edisto Island. The Hutchinson family opened the house as a safe haven during inclement weather, added a cotton gin for community use, and established a ferry service to connect residents to the mainland. The house was occupied until the 1980s, but subsequently fell into serious disrepair. By 2016, the condition of the property was dire when the Edisto Island Open Land Trust stepped out of its traditional role in land conservation and purchased the house to ensure its protection. With the support of the Hutchinson family, the community, private fundraising, and grants, the trust worked with Artists Construction to stabilize the house and advance the exterior restoration. The final phases will include an interior restoration and the return of porches to the exterior. Also, the gingerbread trim, which was historically there, is being stored in a warehouse and will be added back to the house at a later phase. Ultimately, the trust will donate a preservation easement on the property to Historic Charleston, thus ensuring its protection in perpetuity. The project was justly recognized on the cover of the Winter 2021 edition of the National Trust's Preservation magazine. The Hutchinson House will become a museum and resource center, highlighting the history and accomplishments of the Hutchinson family and showcasing the wider Gullah Geechee community on the Sea Islands. For its community-based preservation approach, which is in spirit with and further honors the pivotal role the Hutchinson House played in the development of Edisto's cultural character, Historic Charleston is pleased to present a Whitelaw Award to Edisto Island Open Land Trust. Accepting the award is John Giroux, Executive Director of the Trust. Please come forward. Quarters A is a 7,000 square foot neoclassical house originally constructed in 1905 as the residence of the shipyard commander on the former Navy base. The bold columns and prominent architectural features are befitting of a house holding the highest ranking naval base official and his family. After the base closed in 1996, the house fell into disrepair after decades of neglect. This building is part of the Charleston Navy Yard Officers' Quarters Historic District, which is listed in the National Register. This unique area features vestiges of Chicora Park, a large regional park designed by the acclaimed Olmsted firm and commissioned by the City of Charleston in 1896. Rehabilitation of the property began in August 2018 by the Charleston Naval Complex Redevelopment Authority, which renovated it for future use by the City of North Charleston. The entire project was quite a challenge given the size of the building and its advanced state of deterioration. Extensive structural repairs to the framing and foundation, a new copper roof, replication of original windows and interior finishes, and all new mechanical systems were required. The two-story front porch had to be removed from the building and reconstructed. Fortunately, only one of the historic columns needed to be replaced. The property will soon gain new life as a bed and breakfast and event venue and is part of a much larger effort to revitalize this district, which is adjacent to the renovated Riverfront Park and features commanding views of the Cooper River and Noisette Creek. Historic Charleston Foundation is proud to present a Whitelaw's Founder Award to the Charleston Naval Complex Redevelopment Authority for their work rehabilitating and preserving Quarters A and setting a precedent for preservation excellence as this district continues to evolve. Accepting the award tonight is Robert Ryan, Executive Director of the Charleston Naval Complex Redevelopment Authority. Robert, if you could please come forward. Thank you. One Water Street is an Italian villa-style masonry residence built in 1857. After surviving its first 160 years, largely intact and unchanged, the consequences of building in the former Vandross Creek bed and more recent flooding events began to consistently threaten the structure. For owners, Denise and Bernard Mansheim, elevation was the answer to ensure the property's long-term protection. The architectural team, led by Julia Martin, developed a plan to raise the house. With the guidance of Morris Construction, an elaborate system of steel beams was installed under the first floor, and hydraulic jacks lifted the 450-ton structure in 8-inch increments over the course of several days. The original symmetry of the street facade was preserved through the introduction of a double masonry stair and landing with iron handrails. These lead to the original arched entry doors. 2 years later, and at its final height of 16 feet above sea level, One Water Street is the first non-reinforced masonry structure to be elevated in the city. The thoughtful design closely follows the elevation guidelines that were established by the BAR, the Board of Architectural Review, with the foundation's urging and input, to ensure that property owners embarking on this daunting task had proper guidance, while at the same time respected the historic character of the building and its neighbors. The success of this project is largely due to the unwavering commitment of the Mansheims, who have been incredible stewards. They exercise great care in respecting the historic fabric of the adjacent structures, and through clever design approaches, incorporated details reflective of local architecture, all while focusing on the unique challenges of an elevated structure. Historic Charleston Foundation is pleased to award Denise and Bernard Mansheim with a White Law Award for their steadfast commitment and investment in flood adaptation and resilience for the long-term preservation of One Water Street. Ms. Mansheims, if y'all could please come forward, please. Last but certainly not least, the Francis R. Edmonds Award for Historic Preservation is Historic Charleston Foundation's highest honor. Named for our first director, this award is presented only on very special occasions to recognize exceptional personal achievement in the field of historic preservation and service to the principles embodied in the Foundation's mission. Tonight's honoree has left a mark upon Charleston that few will ever eclipse. As chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals for over 40 years, that's 40 years, Leonard Krawcheck, whom we fondly know as Lenny, presided over many issues with the potential to either irrevocably harm or substantially enhance livability in our community. It is fortunate for us that the work of the BZA under his leadership ensured the latter. His strong leadership capabilities, professionalism, and profound knowledge of the zoning code ensured that the BZA process has been a democratic one. A priority of his was to make sure all the applicants were given a fair shot. At each hearing, Lenny displayed an impressive level of respect, duty of care, and patience for both applicants and opponents at BZA hearings. During contentious meetings, Lenny was unflappable and never lost control of a meeting. Mike Robinson, who served with him over the course of 30 years, asserts that Lenny did so well at contentious meetings and delivered verdicts with such kindness that an applicant might get halfway to the car before figuring out that they had lost their case. Not one to rest on his laurels or to leave work to be done, one of Lenny's last agenda items was to help improve the accommodations ordinance. A hot-button issue with the BZA for several years, the language of the ordinance had left the hands of the BZA members tied when it came to their ability to adequately control accommodations uses, resulting in an unsettling influx of hotels on the peninsula in the last decade. Major changes to the ordinance, initiated by Historic Charleston's litigation on a proposed Meeting Street hotel, passed under Lenny's chairmanship, giving the BZA additional clarity and the legally enforceable power to deny hotel applications. There are few who work so closely with Lenny on zoning issues affecting Charleston than our former mayor, Joe Riley. We are honored to have Mayor Riley with us here tonight, who, like Lenny, served the city of Charleston so capably for 40 years and is himself a recipient of the Edmonds Award. I call upon him at this time to share some reflections on Lenny and his service to Charleston.
Well, thank you very much, Winslow, and thank you for your wonderful service, and the members of the staff and the board, and you wonderful citizens of our community. Gotta make sure I don't lose my stuff here. I was carried away with those pictures of Lenny because I remember when he was a great basketball player. And remember, no one knew the winds and the tides of Charleston Harbor better than Lenny Krawcheck. He is truly, among other things, Charleston's Renaissance man. The city of Charleston is like a gorgeous painting that over time, wise and caring citizens contributed their careful, delicate brushstrokes that continued to enhance this most extraordinarily beautiful work of art. If any of the would-be artists, citizens of our city, had not been determinedly careful, this city could have been permanently marred. It was Charleston's exceptional good fortune that, as Winslow said, for over 40 years, Lenny Krawcheck chaired the city's Board of Zoning Appeals. And in that process, he held the paintbrush. He protected and enhanced the city's timeless beauty and made the work of art more beautiful. This required wisdom and integrity. For many well-meaning citizens had what they thought was a great idea that would have enhanced their interests, but would not have enhanced our civic work of art. The citizens would make their passionate assertions, touting the benefits of their proposal of a new building or change of uses. And more often than not, the citizens were friends or acquaintances of Lenny Krawcheck. For Charleston and the historic district is a relatively small place, and we usually know each other. No matter, Lenny Krawcheck could not be swayed. If what was being proposed did not enhance this city, then Lenny would use his voice, his energy, and his prestige to protect this priceless work of art from the harm of poor judgment. The Board of Zoning Appeals meetings 2 times a year, 2 times a month, for over 40 years, were often contentious and long. People had strong opinions, and they voiced them. Steady, principled, and effective Lenny Krawcheck led that board and protected our city from harm and damage. And I must add that Lenny enjoyed the support over the years of many of his colleagues on the board. For Lenny was a calm, gracious, principled, and convincing leader that usually brought the board members along. Lenny Krawcheck's gift of sterling service to the city is beyond measure, and the evidence of the quality of his service is quite visible and lasting in this priceless work of art, our most beautiful city. Lenny, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Got it. Thank you, Mayor Riley, for his unwavering dedication to a just process, admirable ability to make fair decisions, demonstration of utmost respect to all applicants, and passion for maintaining the historic character and livability of our fair city. Mayor Riley will now present to Leonard Krawcheck with the Francis Edmonds Award on behalf of Historic Charleston Foundation. Lenny, please.
Let me catch my breath. Joe, thank you so much. Joe and I have been friends since we were children, and he and I have one thing in common. We love the city of Charleston, and I hope that I've demonstrated that through my service on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Joe, long time ago, over 40 years ago, called me one afternoon and he said, I want you to be the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I said, Joe, I served, Palmer Gilliard appointed me a few years ago as a member, and I didn't much like it. And he said, I think you're going to if you be the chairman, he said, I think you're going to enjoy the challenge. And he was right. He neglected to tell me that that on the Board of Zoning Appeals that you might pit the public interest against private property rights, and there can only be one winner, and the loser gets very angry. But I did enjoy the challenge, and it kept me interested for a long, long time. I served with some great people. Three in particular, not leaving anybody out, I want to mention three names in particular who did just a wonderful job on the BZA. And it takes the back and forth discussion to have a successful meeting at the BZA. The late Sam Altman was a great member for many, many years. Present, my successor, Mike Robinson, been a wonderful member of the BZA. And also Margaret Smith was a longtime member. And she was steady as a rock and gets really no acknowledgement of what a great member she was. I want to say one more thing. I've got a confession. April Wood, who represented the foundation for many years, I would look for, I would agree with them almost every time with the foundation's position and the Preservation Society as well. You don't have the discretion to vote your own conscience or what you think is the right thing. You have to, what's important is that you follow the law, you apply the facts to the law, and you make a decision, and the Supreme Court makes sure that that's what you do. But time and time again, it happened quite often, we would be hearing a very difficult and close matter, and I would be sitting there behind that desk, and I would think, I wonder what Historic Charleston Foundation thinks about this. Or I hope that we hear from the foundation on this issue. And April or Mr. Walker or Jonathan Poston or Chris King would stand up. And when they would, I would think, the bugle just sounded. The cavalry has arrived to save the day, and more times than not, they would, because they had figured it out well beforehand, and it was a great help to the process. Historic Charleston Foundation had a representative at our meeting. Leading up to this, I multiplied 40 by 2 meetings a month. I think it comes out to, close to 1,000 meetings that we had. But they had a representative there at 1,000 meetings, and it was such a big help to the process. And like Mayor Riley and myself, Historic Charleston Foundation has a huge love for the city of Charleston. And I'll stop. Ms. Edmonds was a friend of mine. She represented the foundation for the first few years that I was the chairman. She would come to our meetings. She was an amazing woman, and she spoke her mind. She was a rock. She was a force of nature, and I got to know her a little bit, but I really got to respect her a lot. And it's very special to me to stand here and receive an award named for Frances Edmonds from the Historic Charleston Foundation. Nothing could be better. And I thank you all so much.
Thank you, Lenny. Two things I take away from that. First of all, I think everybody in this room probably knows that you can't say no to Joe Riley, one. And two, that he somehow also omitted the fact there were no term limits for the chairmanship. Anyway, all right. All indicators are pointing to Charleston's return to the vibrancy we all remember before the pandemic. Charleston's vitality brings significant pressures, such as an unprecedented volume of development projects, infrastructure needs, and residential quality of life issues. And the foundation, with its solution-oriented approach to community issues, convening stakeholders to make progress and tackle the tough challenges, is here and will be here to advance our mission to preserve Charleston's unique character. We have a little pause right now for the live stream, so just bear with me for a second.